Welcome to the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast, a conversation built to help you address the mess, connect the dots, and defeat addiction. Doing your work matters because if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Life is tough and we're here to help. I'm your host, Ben Derrick, and as always, I'll be joined by Roan Hunter. Let's jump right in. Roan, back in the studio for another episode of the Sex, God, and Chaos podcast. Man, I'm telling you, when I listen to these things, I'm getting a lot out of them.
Boy, it seems to be just the feedback we're getting and what people are saying. For some reason, you and me talking, or somehow or another, it makes sense.
We're taking credit.
Yeah,
I was trying to give the guest credit, but you're saying it's us.
Well, yeah, obviously.
It's a combination of all of us, right?
It's this banter right here. This is what changes
This is the life
lives.
to listen. If you'll just every episode listen to the first 3 minutes, it'll change your life.
Just the banter. Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, but going back, obviously it's my job to edit these things, so I get a lot of time to listen to them. And I'm like, man, every episode has probably 5 or 6 high points where if you just focused on that for a minute, you're going to become a more healthy person. And I have to imagine that's why most people are clicking on a podcast named Sex, God, and Chaos. Something is lit off in their life and they're needing some help. It feels like we're providing it.
I thought it was just guys looking for porn.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, either way, there are a lot of different on-ramps to this podcast, a lot of avenues, and we don't judge anybody for their motivations.
No. We're just glad you're here. You're here.
So this episode, we have Alex with us. Alex was actually an instructor in my PSAT module, and which is similar to CSAT, the Certified Sex Addiction Therapist. This guy has a lot of information and has worked with a lot of people in this process, had a lot of smart things to say in your interview with him.
Yes, he does. We talk a lot about his book, his recent book that's come out, Emotional Safety. And it's one of those things that, people, you can hear that, and certainly in today's culture, it's like, I got to go find my safe space or something. And that's not really what it's all about at all. It's just more the idea of emotional safety in relationships. And if that's not present, there's not much that's going to happen. And so Alex does a great job in the book and certainly on the podcast, just unpacking that.
I love the question you sent back to him. Like, okay, let's really define a safe person, because we're always on the lookout for these cultural words that are just flying around because there's so much information out there, especially digitally, so much information. And I've heard this in a lot of social contexts, like, hey, I don't feel like you're a safe person. I don't feel like this is a safe place. And often I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Right?
True.
So, but we throw that word around, and he does a great job really defining what it means to be a safe person.
Mm-hmm. And also to kind of recognize unsafe people. And we have to be discerning when it comes to relationships. And it's not just a married relationship. These are work relationships, family relationships. It's just relationships one-on-one.
Yeah, they get complicated, don't they? Yeah. Yes. Ergo the reason for this podcast, right?
Yeah, here we go.
So without further delay, here is Roan's conversation with Alex Avila.
Man, today, just special guest. We got Alex Avila with us. Alex is a CSAT, which is a certified sex addiction therapist, and just does tremendous work, and has also just released his new book, and we're going to talk about that. And man, Alex, so glad you could join us and make the time to sit with us and just have a conversation.
Yeah, I'm just so happy to be here and love the work that you all are doing to help people understand, this thing called sex and relationships and coordinating that with our spirituality. It's just great to hear what you do and the people you bring on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you and I may have talked a little bit. I always say I've got 2 certifications in sex addiction, and I are one. However, I really just don't like the term, because it's in some ways it's a misnomer.
Yeah.
And the umbrella term that we work with, we just call it sexual brokenness, because we live in an entire culture today that's sexually broken. Whether that's in the church or outside the church, it just cuts across every part of our culture today. And so, man, I would love for just our listeners to kind of hear just a little bit of your backstory and kind of what got you engaged in doing this work.
Yes. Well, I think like a lot of counselors, people helpers, we have this pull. There's something in us that wants to help other people. And often that is because of our own story, our own struggles and trauma. So I came out of a second career. I was in business management for about 15 years. And I wanted to help people because I struggled as well. So it took me some time. I had to do my own work and get into, to have that lived experience for sure so I can help people adequately. But, I struggled in relationships. I was surrounded by divorce. My dad was very abusive. So I learned how to put my guard up and stay away. And you can probably see that's how God was working through me and the topics that I wrote about and that I teach about. But it's very confusing when you have a parent that can be there and is nice and provides for you in one way, but then also does these tremendously abusive things. So it's psychological part of that, spiritual abuse, all of that can be just very confusing, and it kind of sets you up to struggle in relationships. So even friendships, that transferred over to romantic relationships. Of course, I was very insecure, very jealous. I think of my first girlfriends, middle school, high school, I was, I wish I could send them a letter just because I was wanting so much. I wanted them to fill the gaps, and they weren't designed to do that.
Yeah, I just married mine. So I've had to spend a continual process of amends over 40 years. So I get it, no doubt.
Right. Yeah.
Talk about the setup. One of the things we talk about a lot in just certainly the counseling office and just all this men's coaching, other endeavors that I'm involved in. I think one of the things is so often, it's kind of the idea of maltreatment versus disattunement. And maltreatment, that one's easy. The physical abuse, sexual abuse, those types of things. But the hardest one, I think, in my experience, is helping others see this idea of disattunement. We could call it, attachment issues. There's lots of psychobabble terms we could put on it, right. But it really is part of the setup. And so often it's just that idea that I'm just unaware of, these things that went on because how would I know any different? It's just what I knew, what I grew up in. So in working with a client or working with anyone around this, how do you work to kind of help them understand that setup?
Right. So when our primary caregivers, our parents, when they abuse or neglect us, and I even talk about in my book how neglect is abuse, but when that goes on in our childhood experiences, we look to other people and want to answer the questions: do I matter? Am I lovable? Am I worthy? And those three questions are very powerful. I mean, we need to know the answer, and when we look to people to answer those questions for us, that first of all could be very dangerous, but that's what we're looking for. We want to matter to other people. We want to know that we have value. So we go looking for that, I believe. And so when I'm working with people, and very similar to my own story, when there's trauma, and we look to soothe that. We look to get those very legitimate needs met, and that's how it turns into addiction at times. But it's really starts with a very sad story, as you probably know in working with people. When you go back to people, they're 9 years old, 10 years old, and you hear about some of these traumatic things, and they turn to pornography or something else that becomes a lifelong addiction. We learn to soothe, we learn to escape, and it feels good. So we stay stuck in that. So for me, it was it got to depression. My early 20s, I was still trying to figure out life, and I wasn't until my mid 20s before I realized I need to do something different. So I had met this wonderful friend and began going to church with her and became really good friends for several months. We got engaged the next year. For me, it was a spiritual transformation. For me to give my life to Christ, I went to a Christian college. I got baptized. It was a busy year, but I needed to do that. I needed to break free, and I know, I couldn't live the life that I was leading, and seeing where that could head. So when we look at the root of addiction, we look at the root of loneliness. I mean, it is that we need other people to connect, and we are looking to attune with other people, especially if we've been confused by our primary caregivers and they were not attuned, they were not available, or worse, maybe they were constantly abusive to us, telling us these lies about our identity.
Oh yeah, and we always talk about the idea of like we begin to believe the lies, and it becomes a belief system, right? Sometimes we call it the toxic shame messages. Dr. John Breer, in his reactive avoidance trauma model, talks about distress reduction behaviors and the implicit painful memories. Because we're coming up with a story, trying to make sense out of what's going on, and we're basically internalizing a message that somehow, it's about me. It's my fault. If I was better, if I, did right, if I acted better or whatever, we just think that it's our fault in some way. And so that I just always say this work, so much of it is even spiritual formation, because our spirits are formed for good or for evil from the day we're born till the day we die, and we're just trying to make sense out of the things that are going on around us, and then it becomes a belief system.
Right, yeah, and those, they're embedded in there, and then we feel bad about why 40 years later am I still carrying these negative beliefs, and we can feel like a child again. When someone else, either relationally or at work or wherever, somebody taps into that, and we just feel so vulnerable, but then we beat ourselves up. Why am I not over this by now? And that's kind of how trauma works.
It is amazing until you get intentional and become aware. It's almost, I always say it's kind of like life lived by the directions on a shampoo bottle. Read those directions. You turn. It's basically lather, rinse, repeat, and
Right.
we just keep doing the same things, and not really knowing why until we begin to uncover it and dig deeper.
Exactly.
That whole idea of just the formational belief system, I think, is really what we're working with. Or at least good counselors are working with uncovering those, and then beginning to replace that with the truth of who I am. And so that's just fundamental, because we're going to live out what we believe.
Exactly. And, if we don't know this information, we are set off in a direction that ends up harming us, harming other people. And until somebody opens that door for us, and let's look at your past. A lot of times we think, well, that was a long time ago. Why do I need to spend time there? But, when we trace back addiction, we trace back the root of these negative beliefs, and we find out, how powerful they were. And we spend time, we sit in that, we work through that. Maybe we're doing EMDR or some other therapeutic modalities that help us get into the body and kind of go back to where this trauma is stored. We're able to unlock truth, and we align that. We have a parallel process of spiritual growth, and we're getting into the truths of what God says about us and what other believers around us are telling us is true and pointing us to Scripture. We can really have a transformation.
That part, I think, is it's so important. I always tell people, especially working with couples, there's really no such thing as marriage counseling. How do you counsel a marriage? You've got two individuals that hopefully are willing to grow and willing to change, and beginning to look at this. And you've heard it, I'm sure. Oftentimes it's like, well, we're just blaming our parents. And I always say, well, it's not blaming, we're just naming it. These things happened. They were facts. And so oftentimes, I think it's that fifth commandment can be a crazy maker, in our English language, honor your mother and father. And it breeds this kind of family loyalty and all those crazy things that come along with that. But it's interesting, I always said the Hebrew word for honor is kabed, and the word picture is a scale. And God is even saying, weigh it out. You've got to see the good. You've got to see the bad. Mom and dad are broken just like you are. And they did the best they could with the tools or the lack of tools that they had. And it's a double meaning because, those primary relationships with mom and dad, it carries weight. It has impact on every relationship we'll be in the rest of our life. So honor is a crazy maker, I think, a lot of times in working in, Christian communities for sure.
Right. And we believe we can't set boundaries with parents, and it's biblical. We can, right? We can and we should weigh it out. We should look at, what is an unsafe behavior? What am I willing to put up with that is hurting me? Maybe hurting my new family. And so when we can do that, we're taking ownership and we are valuing ourselves, and especially if we're lining up what we're needing, what we're asking for with the Word of God.
So true. So let's talk about your book that just came out. How long has it been out now? Month or two?
About a month.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. What would you say is kind of the main theme of your book?
Well, yeah, it's called Emotional Safety, and the subtitle is Honoring Ourselves While Creating Trust and Presence to Experience Meaningful Relationships. So, like I was saying, everything in there is even in the title of what I really believe God has pulled me into and out of, and wanting to help other people. So I've heard, and you probably hear about this a lot too, as a therapist, but the term emotional safety, and we just have to know what that is. And I thought I need to really help people understand what this is. And I didn't realize this, but as I was writing, over about a year or so, it started to be pointed more at people who have been through some kind of relational trauma. And I mean, I think we all need this concept. We all need to be able to experience and ask for and provide emotional safety to anyone we want to be in any significant relationship with. But I was really seeing how the book was turning into helping people who have been through some kind of trauma, again, especially childhood or relational trauma, been betrayed in relationships. There are several chapters that are very specific to helping people create a new trust. I don't like to use the word sometimes restore trust or restore the marriage, because sometimes a lot of couples will say, I don't like what we had. I want something brand new. So,
amen.
Yeah. Yeah. So helping them create that. I'm primarily a couples or marriage therapist. So as you said, we work with individuals in the relationship, but I had to restrain myself. I wanted to write a lot about, couples and marriage relationships, but I tried to contain that to just a chapter because I wanted this to go, everybody to be able to relate to this, even teens. But, basically it's the concept of emotional safety is being able to share, right? To be ourselves and to share with other people. We only share to the degree we feel safe. So, if we aren't feeling close to someone, we have to ask ourselves why. And are they harming us? Are they not being there for us in the ways we need them to? Are they outright rejecting us, abandoning us? Are they mean? Sometimes we just need people to be kinder to us. So especially people in our inner circles. And so that's a big concept of the book, as I introduce the bringing people. There are people at our gate. Some people come into our gate we didn't invite. They're just there. They might be familiar circles, extended family, but they're there. And we get to choose if we want to invite them to our yard a little closer, and then onto our porch, and then ultimately a seat at our table. So there are these checkpoints we can have. And I wanted to be very practical in the book to help people see these things, ask these questions to themselves, and then specific things they can look for and ask other people to make sure that they are safe for them. So again, they can live an authentic life and they can live an authentic relationship.
Talk about boundaries for a minute, because oftentimes I think people misunderstand what boundaries are. It's like, I'm going to set a boundary on you or something like that. And it's really more distancing than it is a true boundary. We always say boundaries are just simply about who you are as a man or as a woman. Things you will accept, things you will not accept, things that you will do, things that you will not do. And it's really, values and integrity of the individual.
Right. So it's important to have those. It is taking responsibility for ourselves. And I think as Drs. Cloud and Townsend decades ago started talking about, I guess it's where I end and where you begin, right? So if we don't know that line, there will be people that will cross that line. And if we allow that, maybe we don't even see that. And that sometimes is their behaviors. They're minimizing us. They're neglecting us. They are being verbally abusive. They could be doing a lot of things that, they cross our boundaries, but that gets our attention. And anytime something like that gets our attention, we need to pay attention to that and ask ourselves why. So when we have a boundary, it's not always a wall to keep people out. It could be a gate. We might let people into our yard, and that's okay, but we're not going to let everybody who's in our circle into our most private places, because that's where we're most vulnerable. That's where they can do the most harm. So we have these different checkpoints where, I can tell this person, this story, this personal detail about me, but I'm definitely not telling that person. And it might be still a friend or family member, but I know if I told this person that, they're going to use it against me. I'm going to feel less than. So I know having these, even emotional boundaries with people will help protect me. And so that's honoring ourselves. And we, of course, don't want to cross other people's boundaries. And I don't think we sit down and say, okay, here are my boundaries. What are your boundaries? Let's see if we can make this relationship work. Maybe that should be one of those criteria in a dating website or something, right? List your top 10 boundaries. But
that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes we don't even know until we cross them, and that's okay. We're human. But when we do cross a boundary or someone crosses ours, if we have some sense of safety in that relationship, we can have a conversation about it. And we can just say, what you just did right there really hurt. And let me tell you how. And we can't just hope or expect that they won't do it again. We need to ask them and tell them, don't do that again, right? Here's what's going to happen. And I can't stay in the relationship, or I can't spend time with you if you're going to do this, right? As long as you're being unkind or you're doing these things that are harming my trust, I can't be vulnerable with you.
Yeah, it's, and the thing about it, in my experience, the boundary crossers, the people that they don't go through the gate, they just jump the fence, and they don't respect anything that you ask them to do. What do you do with those people? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and like I said, nobody's perfect, and I wanted to be very careful in the book to distinguish between what is an unsafe behavior and what is an unsafe person to me. So we all do unintentional harm. Again, we don't have the rule book or the boundaries list for everybody around us. So people that are open, I think that's the main difference between an unsafe person and an unsafe behavior is they are open to hearing how they've hurt you, and they're willing to change. It bothers them to hurt you. They don't want to see you hurt because they love you. They care for you. And so unsafe people, these are people that are driving the bulldozer through your gate, right? They're in your yard. They're trying to jump on your porch, and they're not asking permission. They're just doing it. So when people do that, I think we deal with them in a different way, and we have to be very clear. And if somebody is doing narcissistic behaviors, if they're really minimizing, they're really trying to have power over us, we have to ask ourselves, can we be in relationship with this person if we have to be? Sometimes we can't get out so easily. We have to change how we interact with them, how we respond, because we, again, can't be vulnerable. So we start putting these layers on of protection, which sadly, that's going to inhibit any sense of closeness. We're not going to have intimacy with any friend or marriage partner, or anybody that we have to stay guarded around. So, there's some work to do, but we have to empower those people that are being manipulated, that are, on the other end of gaslighting. They're on the other end of blame shifting, especially betrayed partners. We have to make sure we empower them to speak up for themselves, to name those very clear boundaries and to enforce them so they can stay safe. They can be true to who they are, and, they will help prevent that pain from coming in.
Yeah, in our men's coaching vernacular, our language, we call those people a bull. And,
Yes.
sometimes with a bull, you have to hit them in the head with a 2x4 before they'll listen to anything, right? I don't mean that literally, but I mean, you've really got to be direct, and you're probably going to have to state your boundaries about who you are and what you'll accept. Not just once, but if it's someone that you have to be in relationship with, eventually you can tame the bull, but it takes a lot of hard work.
It's exhausting, right? Because we have to do the work. We have to be clear and consistent and protecting ourselves. And if they're not responding, they're not adapting, they're not changing, and we have to keep doing that. It's just so emotionally exhausting.
Oh yeah. So talk about just the characteristics of a safe person, because I think a lot of times we may say that in passing or talk about it in counseling, but just, practically speaking, what's a safe person look like?
A safe person is someone who is present with you. So when someone is emotionally present, they show up, right? They show up with their whole body. They're giving you full attention, and they're communicating to you just by showing up that you matter to them. Answers those questions. I matter. This person cares for me. So when we're being safe for others, we're doing that. We're not looking at our phone. We're not easily distracted. We are present with our whole body, our body language, our eyes, if it's culturally appropriate. But our body, everything is pointed toward them, saying that I'm here and I care about what you say, even if I disagree. Right? Validation is important, and validation isn't a stamp of approval saying I validate everything you just said and I completely agree. It just means I care enough to keep listening, and I'm present with you because you matter to me, because I love you, and that's the most important thing. It's not that we agree. It's not that I have to align with everything that you are doing. So first of all, it's how we show up to people. And, of course, we're the obvious things, right? We're not gossiping about them. If we're a safe person, we're not judging them. So they feel accepted by us. They can be themselves. They can let their guard down and be vulnerable with us. So this as a clinician. And when people can tell you this, I never told this to anybody before.
Oh yeah.
And then I just get the goosebumps right away because something sacred is coming. And so anybody that can tell you that, that's a great indicator that, wow, I must have done something there. What am I doing to allow them to go to this deep sacred place? They've never gone before, and they're telling me. So we don't have to be a therapist in order to hear that, but if we have had people come to us and share deep things, and not premature deep things, and they just met you and they're unloading on you. I mean, sometimes your presence, is going to be that invites that. Right? There's something about you that invites that, so people will share. But it's just really how we show up, and how we're responding. Are we accepting them by loving them for who they are, and not what they do sometimes? Not that they do little things that annoy us, but at a core level, we love this person by how we show up, by, how we're validating them, by how we care about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's those people that you meet at Walmart, and they begin to tell you their life story. We would say they have very loose boundaries, right?
You go.
There's difference, right, between loose boundaries, rigid boundaries, and what are healthy boundaries. And
Right.
yeah, that's a part of it too. It's this idea of emotional safety is so important, and just practically speaking, again, just creating safety from a practical standpoint. Let's just say if in a relationship where there's been betrayal, one of the things I often hear is like, when will she ever trust me again? And I often say, well, I think she'll let you know, and your job at this point is like you've got to create safety. So from a practical standpoint, what would be ways to create safety in a relationship?
For a betrayed partner, what the first thing they're trying to do is protect themselves, and they can't be responsible. They don't know what you're going to do. They can't predict if you're going to hurt them again, if you're the person that betrayed them. So they have to take that responsibility themselves. So anything we can do to take that off their plate, we're creating ease and safety and peace. And that produces confidence and the capability of building trust again. So if a big thing that I teach men, I run men's sexual recovery groups, relationship repair, all that. But I talk about being more forthcoming, initiating. Don't let your wife have to track you down for a check-in just to see how you're doing, if you're doing your recovery activities. And so be initiating that will help build trust. And so communicating, as I mentioned, listening is loving. So one of the best things they can do is listen, but they have to say something too. We can't just say, I don't know. That answer I hear over and over again is just very hurtful for a betrayed partner who's needing to hear something, that you're doing something different to help reassure me that you won't do this again, this behavior that harmed me. So, give me something here. So to rebuild that, to build trust, we have to be consistent. Words and actions demonstrated over time. They have to be sincere. You're using your own words. That's how you really can tell someone's doing the work, their own work, is that they're listening to podcasts. They're going to therapy. They're going to groups and support groups, and they're reading, and they are really demonstrating that they're doing the work. But now it needs to come out in their own words and show that they're changed. Something's different about them. And we see that with humility, right? If we see humility, if we see them surrendering, if we see them, giving the signs that, okay, I don't have it all figured out. I have to keep working here. I have to keep learning. And they're taking ownership, and they're validating, they're listening. They are creating a sense of safety that needs to happen before trust can happen. If they don't build safety, they're not going to build trust, and they're not going to build intimacy.
Oh yeah, I always Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. The wisdom chapters, the wisdom book.
Yeah.
It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." But that Hebrew word for trust literally means safety and security. Those two things are foundational. Trust is not going to happen. And so it's like the idea is like, how do I create safety? And certainly, as you said, words are pretty meaningless. That's not an indicator of change. That could just be more gaslighting. And it's the actions and, doing the things that you need to do in your growth for you, not to save the marriage, but to become, the man or woman that God has created you to be. And that takes effort. And so, going to group, going to counseling, those are actionable items. And, doing the reading, we we call it doing the work, as you do as well. And it's just such an important piece in order to create safety. And then trust will happen.
Mm-hmm. And if they have to answer the same question 1,000 times or more than 1,000, that, a betrayed partner is in trauma mode, right? So they're trying to put together the pieces, and if something doesn't line up, it's natural for them to have another question. And if someone who betrayed trust is saying, I already answered that, why are you asking me that? I'm just going to give you the same answer. So defensiveness is going to break down your trust that you've worked so hard to build. So we have to set the expectation that, if we're trying to build trust after, some very harmful behaviors we've done to our partner, we have to prepare to answer that question 1,000 times or more, and to know that they need reassurance and they don't believe us, because we messed up in a huge way. So it's going to take some time, and we have to be in it for the long haul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, and you said it. I think the key word, the key indicator of like true recovery, it is humility. And boy, if that element is missing, it's like danger, because that's someone that's probably on track to do something again. Not that it's about perfection, but certainly honesty and transparency and humility are keys in this process of rebuilding trust. Absolutely. Man, just love the conversation, and I could do this all day. It's just so much fun. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you and they want to get the book, just tell us where they can find you, and tell us how they can get your book.
Sure. So best way to learn about me and get in contact is my website. So it's my name, Alex, and then my middle initial A, and then Avila, A, V as in victory, ILA.com. And you can find my 3 books on Amazon. And I have those resources there, and I have an online relationship course. I offer counseling, coaching. So I'm doing groups, some online classes for men, but you can reach out to me, get in contact with me through my website.
Awesome. Man, love you, love the work you're doing, and it's good to be in the fight with somebody on the front lines, and fighting with the same weapons and tools that we fight with. And so it's just great to be with you, and we'll see you again soon. Certainly at the ITAP Symposium next year. Looking forward to that. And you're actually doing some of the training now for CSAT, or I know you're doing the PSAP training as well. And so, man, you have so much to offer, and so appreciate all that you do. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate working alongside you as well. And I love that program. Pastors are being trained to spot some of this, to help people on the front lines, and it's wonderful. So I've appreciated that through ITAP, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. So thank you for all you do, all the wonderful work that you and Eva do, that is really transforming lives. So it's an honor to know you, and to be fighting with the same weapons. It's awesome.
To learn more about what you've heard today, and to engage with the Sex, God, and Chaos team, visit sexgodchaos.com.